Beyond the last 4-lane exit, where the cell towers thin out and the radio dissolves into static, the land begins to fold in on itself. Ridge after ridge rises green and close, like the earth exhaled and never quite breathed back in. Fog does not lift here so much as retreat, sliding up the hollows at dawn and pooling again by dusk, a blue haze clinging to the ridgelines, the color that gave this range its old name. The ridges themselves are unforgiving, steep and rock-veined. The coves between them are gentle almost to the point of tenderness. Wild slope above, soft shelter below. The mountains hold both at once, but the true character of this country lies not just in its ridgelines and hollows, but in the people who built lives inside them. People who never fully joined the world rushing past on the interstate below, and in many hollows, never intended to. This is a region caught, deliberately, between 2 centuries, one foot in a subsistence economy of gardens and wood stoves, the other in a present tense of satellite dishes and highway traffic passing just out of reach. It survives by holding both truths without resolving them. This is a story not of poverty and not of nostalgia, but of self-reliance. This is Appalachia, the story of a mountain culture that chose to live apart from the grid and built, in its place, a way of life entirely its own. Before today's journey begins, leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. We read your comments, and we love seeing our global audience grow. The mountains do not simply surround the people who live here, they organize their lives down to the hour. Appalachia's terrain is old, worn smooth by geologic time rather than sharpened by it, but that softness is deceptive. A ridge that looks gentle on a map can take 40 minutes to climb on foot, and a hollow that appears on no road atlas at all can hold 3 generations of the same family, tucked behind a bend where the gravel turns to dirt and the dirt turns, eventually, to trail. Weather moves through these valleys with an intimacy that flatland weather never achieves. The storm can sit over one hollow and leave the next completely dry. Fog rolls down at first light thick enough to swallow a barn hole, and by 9 it can be gone, burned off by a sun that seems, at these elevations, unusually close. Winters bring ice that seals gravel roads for days, and people here have learned not to fight that isolation, but to prepare for it. Wood piles stacked chest high by October. Pantries lined with jars of what the garden gave up in August. Generators fueled and tested before the first hard freeze. This terrain breeds a particular temperament, patient, self-sufficient, wary of anyone who claims to have an easy answer. A farmer here does not ask whether the mountain is inconvenient. The mountain simply is, and life is built to fit around it, the way water finds the shape of a creek bed rather than arguing with the rock. In many of these hollows, the population is small enough that a stranger's truck gets noticed before it reaches the second bend. A county here might hold fewer people than a single city block elsewhere. Spread across hundreds of square miles of ridge and hollow, neighbors, in the truest sense of the word, might live a mile apart as the crow flies and 20 minutes apart by the only road that connects them, and still they know each other's business, each other's kin, each other's troubles, going back 3 or 4 generations. This intimacy is not incidental. It is survival architecture. When a well runs dry or an axle breaks on the mountain road, help does not come from a service call. It comes from whoever lives closest and owns a chain or a spare part. Everyone here can name, without hesitation, who to call for a chainsaw, who keeps bees, who can pull a calf, who still knows how to set a broken bone until the drive to town is possible. Isolation in Appalachia has never meant loneliness. It has meant a tighter, more essential form of community, one where every person's skill is known and, sooner or later, needed. Long before the sun fully clears the ridgeline, the region's daily rhythm begins at its unofficial town hall, the general store, sitting at the crossroads where two gravel roads happen to meet. The gravel lot fills first with work trucks, engines still ticking as they cool, mud caked thick on the wheel wells from roads no city plow has ever touched. Inside, the store smells of coffee, chewing tobacco, and the particular mustiness of a building that has stood, mostly unchanged, for 60 or 70 years. A hand-lettered sign lists the price of live bait beside the price of gasoline. Men in canvas coats lean against the counter not because they need anything in particular, but because this is where the news of the hollow gets exchanged: who is sick, whose cattle got out, which creek is running high enough to worry about, who needs a hand splitting wood before the weather turns. This ritual repeats itself daily, almost liturgically. No one schedules it. Everyone simply knows the hour when the store fills, the way tide knows its hour without a clock. It is where a widow learns someone has already mowed her hayfield before she asked, where a teenager hears, second-hand and gently, that his grandfather is failing, where the entire practical intelligence of the community changes hands over coffee that costs $1 and has not changed recipe in 40 years. If the general store is where the community gathers, family is the deeper structure holding the whole of it together. In Appalachia, family rarely means the nuclear unit alone. It means aunts, second cousins, in-laws, and the particular Appalachian category of kin that extends outward almost indefinitely. Bound less by exact bloodline than by shared history and shared land. It is common, still, for 3 or 4 generations to live within walking distance of one another. A grandmother's house at the head of the hollow, her children's houses strung down the branch road below, grandchildren cutting through the woods on trails worn smooth by decades of the same short walk. Land here is rarely sold outside the family if it can be helped. A parcel passed down since before the Civil War might now be divided a dozen ways among cousins who have never lived anywhere else, each maintaining an unspoken right to hunt it, garden a corner of it, or simply walk it whenever they need quiet. This is not sentimentality, it is infrastructure. Childcare, elder care, home repair, and food security all run first through family before they run through any formal system. Because for most of this region's history, no formal system reliably reached this far up the mountain at all. Among the collective traditions that still define the calendar here, few carry the weight of hog-killing time, the late autumn ritual. Once nearly universal across these mountains, and still practiced in pockets today, when neighboring families gather at first frost to slaughter, butcher, and preserve a season's worth of meat in a single, long, cold day of shared labor. Before refrigeration reached these hollows, and in many households still today, this was not an individual task, but a communal one. Men handled the killing and the heavy work of scalding and scraping. Women rendered lard in great black kettles over open fire, ground sausage, and packed meat in salt for the smokehouse. Children were given jobs too, carrying wood, stirring cracklings, learning by watching exactly how much of the animal would be used, which was, by necessity, nearly all of it. The day ended, as these gatherings always did, with a shared meal, fresh tenderloin, the first taste of the labor, eaten together on the porch or around a fire, while the rest of the meat hung curing in the smokehouse. It was, and remains where it survives, less a chore than a covenant. An annual reminder that no single household could face the winter entirely alone, and none, in this community, was ever expected to. If Appalachia has a true civic center, it is not a building at all. It is the front porch. Nearly every home here, from the oldest hand-hewn cabin to the newest single-wide, keeps one, and it functions as the region's genuine third place. Not quite public, not quite private, the threshold where the household's business and the hollow's business quietly merge. Evenings bring a slow procession of visitors, rarely announced, never quite unexpected. A neighbor walks over with a sack of tomatoes too many to use alone. A cousin stops on the way home from work just to sit a spell. Rocking chairs creak against porch boards worn shiny at the exact spots feet have rested for decades. Conversation here moves unhurried, circling back on itself, comfortable with long silences that would feel awkward almost anywhere else. It is on the porch that disputes get quietly settled, that courtships once played out under a watchful parent's eye, that the oldest members of a family pass down, almost without meaning to, the stories that keep a hollow's history alive. The porch asks nothing of anyone who sits on it except presence. In a region defined by physical distance, it remains the one place distance disappears entirely. Faith in Appalachia is rarely a Sunday-only matter. It is stitched into the rhythm of the week itself, anchored most often by a small clapboard church perched at a bend in the road, its steeple visible for miles before the building beneath it comes into view. Many of these congregations are independent Baptist or holiness in tradition, small enough that the preacher works a day job during the week, driving a school bus, running a sawmill, and steps into the pulpit on Sunday not as a career, but as a calling, unpaid or paid only in what the collection plate happens to hold. Service here is unhurried and unamplified in the oldest congregations, voices rising together in shape-note hymns whose harmonies trace back to singing schools 2 centuries old. The notes shaped like triangles and squares on the page rather than modern staff notation, a system almost nowhere else in the country still teaches. Testimony is spoken aloud, plainly, by whoever feels moved to stand. Homecoming Sundays draw families back from cities hours away, graves in the church cemetery cleared of leaves and decorated the day before. Dinner spread afterward on long tables under the trees, fried chicken, deviled eggs, banana pudding, more food than any one congregation could eat. The church, more than any other institution here, holds the community's grief and its gladness in the same room. Funerals and baptisms, revivals and potlucks, asking nothing of anyone who walks through its doors except a willingness to belong. Appalachian identity is carried, perhaps more than anywhere else in America, through sound, through a musical and linguistic tradition that reaches back directly to the British Isles, and has been preserved here with a purity found almost nowhere else in the country. The old ballads, brought over by Scots-Irish and English settlers centuries ago, survived in these isolated hollows largely unchanged, passed voice to voice, long after they had vanished from the villages that first sang them. The fiddle came first, sharp and insistent. The banjo, an instrument with African origins reshaped in these mountains, joined later, giving old-time music its distinctive rolling, percussive pulse. On a Friday night, a back porch gathering might produce, without any rehearsal at all, 3 generations playing the same tune their great-grandparents played, note for note. The melody a kind of inheritance passed down more reliably than land. The language, too, carries the past forward. Words like a ferd, young un, poke for a paper bag, and grammatical structures that linguists trace directly to Elizabethan and Scots-Irish speech patterns still surface in daily conversation, largely unnoticed by the people using them. Storytelling itself remains a valued skill. A good tale, stretched and embellished across a dozen tellings, is understood here not as exaggeration, but as art, a craft passed down as deliberately as any quilt pattern or woodcarving technique. No honest account of this region can pass over the hardship woven into its history, though the people who carry that history rarely dwell on it themselves. Appalachia's coal camps, its company towns, its decades of extraction that enriched distant shareholders while leaving many mountain communities without paved roads or reliable water. These are not distant memories here. They are grandfathers' stories, black lung diagnoses, abandoned tipples rusting beside creeks that still run faintly orange with mine runoff. And yet the pride that survives this history is not bitter. It is the pride of people who went underground before daylight and came up after dark for wages that rarely matched the risk, and did it anyway. Because it fed their families. It is the pride of the 1921 miners who marched at Blair Mountain, of union halls that stood against company towns that owned the very stores where miners were forced to spend their pay. Mention it, and a mountain family will tell the story plainly, without self-pity, a fact of the past acknowledged and then set gently aside, the way one might set down a heavy tool at the end of a long day. Communal identity here also finds expression in shared sport, and few traditions carry as much local weight as the turkey shoot. A rifle competition, often held as a fundraiser for a volunteer fire department or a small country church, where marksmen from across the hollow gather to test their aim against a paper target for the prize of a frozen turkey or a cut of meat. Squirrel season, opening each fall, carries its own quiet ritual significance, not merely hunting, but an inherited skill passed from parent to child before either could legally drive. A rite that teaches patience, woodcraft, and the particular economy of using an entire animal rather than any part of it. Horseshoes ring out from church picnics and family reunions alike, the metallic clang against the stake as familiar a summer sound as cicadas. And at county fairs scattered through the mountains each September, tobacco spitting contests and coon dog competitions draw crowds who came. Mostly not to win but to be present, because showing up in this culture is its own form of belonging. Appalachia's traditional economy was never built on a single industry so much as a portfolio of small, land-based skills, layered together to make a living where cash was often scarce and self-sufficiency was not optional but required. The garden came first. Nearly every household still keeps one. Corn and beans and squash planted together in the old Three Sisters pattern many families trace back generations, canned each August in mason jars that line cellar shelves like a kind of edible calendar. Beyond the garden, the mountains themselves offered a living to those who knew how to read them. Ginseng, sang, in the local tongue, grows wild in the shaded coves here and nowhere else in such abundance, and diggers who know the secret patches, often guarded as closely as any family recipe, can earn real money selling roots to buyers who ship them, ultimately to markets in Asia. Logging, moonshining in an earlier era, blacksmithing, basket weaving from white oak splits, quilting sold at craft co-ops. Each trade demanded years of apprenticeship, usually within a family, and each is still practiced today by artisans determined not to let the skill die with them. Unlike a nation swept along by industrialization, Appalachia's relationship to the modern economy has always been one of visible, deliberate resistance. The interstate runs within an hour of nearly every hollow in this region. Broadband in many counties does not. Dollar stores have opened in towns that once had none, standing incongruously beside hardware stores whose ledgers are still, in places, kept by hand. This is not backwardness. It is a choice repeated across generations, sometimes economic necessity, sometimes conviction, and often both at once. A family with satellite internet and a smartphone for the kids may still draw water from a spring because it tastes better and costs nothing. A young father who spent 4 years in the military and saw the wider world may come home anyway, specifically because the hollow offers something the world outside could not. Land that is his, quiet that is his, a pace of life he was not willing to trade even for a higher paycheck. Modernity sits in plain sight here, visible on the highway, audible on the radio, while daily life continues to move at the older, slower rhythm the mountains have always kept. At the center of Appalachian daily life sits the table, and at the center of the table sits a pot of soup beans, pinto beans, simmered slow all day with a hock of ham for flavor, served alongside cornbread baked in a cast-iron skillet seasoned by decades of use. It is the region's truest comfort food, cheap enough to stretch through a hard winter, filling enough to fuel a full day's labor. And, for most who grew up here, tied inseparably to the smell of a grandmother's kitchen. Breakfast might bring biscuits and gravy, or fried apples pulled from a tree in the yard. In spring, ramps, a wild onion garlic relative that grows only in these specific mountain coves, draw entire communities out to dig them, followed by ramp suppers held at churches and firehouses where the pungent, celebrated vegetable is fried with eggs or potatoes and eaten in company, the smell lingering on hands for days afterward as a kind of badge. Sweet tea, brewed strong and poured over ice, remains the default drink at every gathering, summer or winter alike. Even as younger families bring home groceries from a supermarket 40 minutes down the mountain. The old recipes persist at the center of the table, soup beans and cornbread served alongside whatever the modern pantry has added. Tradition and convenience sharing the same plate without apparent contradiction. To move through this country on foot is to understand it in a way no map can offer. A trail climbs steadily through hardwood forest, oak, hickory, tulip poplar, the canopy so dense in summer that daylight arrives filtered and green like walking through water. Underfoot, the ground is soft with decades of leaf fall, broken by outcrops of grey sandstone that jut through the soil like the mountain's bones showing through. Halfway up, the forest opens briefly onto a bald, a natural clearing where the trees simply stop, for reasons still debated among botanists, offering a view that stretches ridge after blue ridge to the horizon, each one paler than the last until the farthest fades entirely into haze. A hawk rides a thermal overhead without a single wing beat. Somewhere below, out of sight, a chainsaw starts and stops, then starts again, someone clearing deadfall before the next storm brings it down across a road. Descending into a hollow, the temperature drops noticeably, the air turning cool and mineral-scented near a creek running clear over stones worn round by centuries of the same current. A garden appears through a break in the trees, then a tin roof, then a dog barking to announce a visitor the household has probably already heard coming. The land here does not merely surround the people who live in it. It participates in their lives directly, every day, the weather they wake to, the water they drink, the wood they burn, the game they eat. Appalachia is not a backdrop. It is a working partner in daily survival. Infrastructure in Appalachia tells its own quiet story of the old world and the new existing side by side, often within the same quarter mile. A state highway, freshly paved, runs along the valley floor, carrying log trucks and delivery vans and the occasional tourist RV navigating switchbacks with visible caution. But the moment that highway gives way to a county road, and the county road to an unmarked gravel branch, the 21st century begins to recede behind it. Many homes deep in the hollows are reached only by roads that a two-wheel drive car cannot manage in wet weather. Some families keep an older truck parked at the head of the holler specifically for hauling groceries the final half mile when the road turns to mud. Bridges here are sometimes nothing more than a single culvert and a layer of gravel, built by the family itself, replaced by hand after every serious flood. And yet, mounted on the roof of even the most remote cabin, a satellite dish is now a common sight, connecting a household with no landline and no cell service at all to a signal beamed down from space, streaming the same programs watched in any city apartment. The mail still arrives by a rural carrier who has driven the same route for 20 years and knows, without being told, which of his boxes belong to someone elderly living alone. It bears repeating, because it is the truest thing to be said about this region. Appalachia has not resisted the modern world so much as absorbed only the parts of it that serve the older way of life, while quietly declining the rest. A household here might run a chest freezer on grid electricity, stocked with venison taken that same fall, beside a wood stove that provides the actual daily heat because it is free, reliable, and requires nothing from a utility company that might, in a bad ice storm, fail for a week at a time. This balance is neither accident nor performance for outsiders. It is the accumulated wisdom of people who learned, across generations of booms and busts, floods, and coal company betrayals, that self-sufficiency is the only form of security the mountains have ever reliably offered. Tradition here does not compete with modern convenience. It simply insists on being the foundation modern convenience gets layered onto, never the other way around. Appalachian childhood still carries markers unfamiliar to much of the country. Children here are often given real responsibility early, tending chickens before school, learning to drive a truck on private land years before a license is legal, accompanying a grandfather on his traplin or a grandmother into the garden, not as an activity, but as an expectation. A first successful deer hunt remains, in many families, an unofficial rite of passage, marked with quiet ceremony, the meat processed and shared, the story of the hunt retold at every family gathering for years afterward. 4-H and FR programs remain vital institutions in mountain schools, teaching livestock husbandry and welding alongside standard academics, often the only formal pathway a rural teenager has toward a trade. But the tension every mountain family eventually faces is the same one. The nearest university, the nearest hospital job, the nearest opportunity that pays reliably, usually sits hours away, down out of the mountains entirely. Many young people leave, for the military, for college, for work in cities that can absorb them. Some never return except for holidays. Others come back after a decade away, having tested the wider world and chosen, deliberately, the hollow instead, a choice that, in this culture, carries more weight and more respect than never having left at all. The day in Appalachia divides itself along old, unbending lines. Mornings begin early and physically, livestock fed before coffee is finished, wood split while the air is still sharp with cold, gardens weeded in the cool hour before the sun climbs high enough to make the work uncomfortable. Labor here is not abstract. It is measured in cords of wood stacked, rows hoed, animals watered, and it fills the daylight hours almost without exception. But as evening arrives, the rhythm softens completely. Porch lights flick on along the hollow, one after another, like a slow chain reaction. Supper is eaten together, often with the television off, conversation carrying the day's small news.